Have you ever sat down to meditate and just I don't have to tell you just how maddening this feature of your mind is. After all, if you clicked on this video, it means you already recognize that a dramatic, talkative mind is creating most, if not all, of the unnecessary stress in your life. But the opposite must also be true. Yeah, like if stress comes from the mind that's verbally looping on itself, then a mind free from that chatter is going to be incredibly, wonderfully peaceful. Look, every single effect in the world must come from some prior cause, right? Apples come from planting seeds. Businesses come from driven entrepreneurs. Colds and flus come from pathogens. In the same way, naturally, the chaos of your mind must have some deeper cause to it. It must have been set in motion earlier on from some deeper source. So in this short video, I'm gonna do two very simple things for you. First and foremost, I'm going to explain three major causes as to why your mind has trouble calming down. And then second, I'm gonna give you a few pieces of advice for quieting the mind based on those causes. These are gonna be tools and techniques that you can use anywhere, anytime. Before making a big decision, while bored in line at the grocery store, during an argument with someone over politics. Clear your mind, just like that. By the way, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Ethan. I'm an international yoga teacher, writer, entrepreneur, helping seekers like yourself heal their bodies, master their minds, and adjust to the new earth. If all that sounded really exciting to you, buckle in, let's get started. Most people today assume that their brain creates thoughts. That is, they tend to believe that the firing of neurons creates thoughts like an airplane cutting through the sky creates sound. AKA, they believe that thoughts are just a byproduct of a fancy machine in their skull doing its thing. This is not strictly true. In fact, yogis and mystics have known for millennia that it's basically the opposite. Your neurons do not fire to create thoughts. Thoughts are created to fire your neurons. That's a subtle but hugely important distinction to make. And in order for you to really understand it, it's actually helpful for you to view your brain as just a complex radio. A radio, the machine itself, is not the source of the music. Instead, it tunes into and picks up the musical information that's already playing in the invisible field around it, and then translates it into sounds that your eardrums can pick up. Same thing with your incredible brain. It isn't the creator of thoughts, it's the receiver and translator of thoughts. That said, in the same way that a radio can have a loose wire and receive weird static instead of beautiful melodies, your brain can also experience interference, affecting the transmission of its thoughts. Physiologically speaking, brain malfunctioning is the relative cause of thought-specific pathologies like OCD, anxiety, bipolar, and Alzheimer's. For example, you can pause this video and read the true cause of OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, according to the medical medium, a source I personally trust. With all that, one really important suggestion for clearing your mind is actually to start flushing out all of the toxic debris that's accumulated in the physical tissue of your brain, to clean your radio. If you want to find out how exactly to go about doing this, I again cannot recommend medical medium information highly enough. Specifically his book, Brain Saver, which has radically transformed my own health and understanding of my body. I'll link to that below, but if you're not inspired to look into it, or if you think it's all a bunch of hoo-ha, fine. I do, however, highly suggest that you start your detox journey by beginning each day with 32 ounces of freshly squeezed room temperature lemon water. That's going to help your liver out significantly so that it can start really cleaning your body. All right, hope you're listening closely, because this cause is particularly important if you want to actually quiet your mind. Starts with this: unproductive thoughts, those thoughts that you're trying to free yourself from, are entirely dependent on your senses. Rods and cones in your eyes, cochlear hair cells in your ears, neuroreceptors in your nose, taste buds on your tongue, mechanoreceptors in your skin. All of your bodily data collection devices, are magically decoded by your pattern recognizing brain and nervous system so that a plausible and finite story about what might be happening in reality, aka the thoughts that you have about what's going on, can then occur. Look, that might have sounded complicated, but I promise you it's not. You weren't thinking about the sandwich until a smell wafted into your nose. You weren't imagining the concert you were planning on going to this weekend until you heard a song on the radio that reminded you of it. You weren't fantasizing about sex until you saw that thing that reminded you of that other thing that reminded you of that one time that you did that one thing that reminded you of sex. Let me say it more clearly. You cannot identify with a story, i.e. you cannot have compulsive, repetitive thoughts without your senses. You just can't. So here's the hack then for creating and maintaining a crystal clear, empty mind. Just stop seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Ta-da! All right, come on. You can't just stop perceiving the world, right? This isn't as crazy as it sounds. In fact, it's happening all the time. Consider deep, dreamless sleep as an example. You're no longer consciously hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, or feeling what's happening in your physical environment, right? Like someone can be talking loudly just 2 feet away from you, but from your point of view, you are deaf to it. AKA during deep sleep, you are no longer sensing your world at all. And when that happens, when you stop perceiving your world entirely, as is the case when you're in deep dreamless sleep, well then all of your conscious problems you have about the world, i.e. all of your thoughts, have entirely disappeared. Amazingly, with the right training, you can do this in waking life too. How? Let me give you an analogy to make this both intuitive and obvious. Take LiDAR sensors on a driverless car. How are they able to do what they do? Yes, of course, they use silicon chips and computer code in order to operate, but even more fundamental than that are their power requirements. Electricity. That is, LiDAR sensors need to be plugged in to some kind of battery in order for them to actually work. Same thing with every single one of your senses. They all require a steady supply of life force energy in order to operate. In other words, if you no longer want to have thoughts or complaints about how cold or hot it is in your environment, then you need to learn how to take energy away from the temperature receptors in your skin. Or if you want to stop judging the conversation that's happening beside you and focus on your work at the coffee shop, well then you have to learn how to withdraw life force from your eardrums. But how do you do that? I can think of 2 easy and simple ways. Number 1, relax your muscles and slow your breath way down. So slow that your breath becomes barely noticeable. Because this reduces the amount of oxygen or fuel coming into your system, well then the body really has no choice but to power down unnecessary functions, such as perceiving, senses, and thinking. If you're curious about this one, make sure to take one of my yoga tutorials. That's linked in the description below, or subscribe to the channel to keep updated. Second, you can remove life force from a particular sense, or in the end, all of your senses, simply by bringing or shifting your focus elsewhere. For instance, you can't be fully concentrated or present with the words that I'm speaking, aka you can't be sensing with your ears, while simultaneously perfectly concentrating on your left pinky toe, aka sensing with your body. It's one or the other. In other words, where your attention goes, energy flows. And that's the perfect segue to trying not to think. When I tell you, for the love of God, please do not think about that one extremely cringe memory you had with your high school crush. What do? Well, obviously, you think of that one extremely cringe memory you had with your high school crush. This is a totally natural feature of your mind, but is actually a huge problem for meditators who sit down with the explicit purpose of trying to clear all thoughts from their mind. Why? Because the harder you try not to think, the more you think. And that's because the egoic mind evolved to think about whatever you tell it to do or not to do. In other words, your mind is a rebel that doesn't take kindly to censorship. How do you escape from this insanity? How do you step out from the tree of your own perpetual thinking and back into the warm rays of cosmic silence? There's a loophole And it's very, very simple. Just pay attention to the stillness that already exists within and around your mind. Let me explain. Every single thought that you have, whether in the form of images or sounds in the head, has a brief rest period to it. Like, even if I start speaking really, really quickly, and I try to get everything out without having a single lag in my words, go. Even when I do that, there's always going to be tiny moments of rest in between my vocalized words. Or think about when you're watching YouTube or Netflix. Like, no matter how long the video is, 5 minutes, 5 hours, doesn't matter, that video will always come to an end. And that end is always going to have a noticeable pause in between it and the next one playing. The exact same principle applies in your mind, in all that the mind contains. Nanopauses exist in between each of your individual thoughts, as if the mind needed a quick breath before continuing its rant or drama. And if you give those nanopauses sincere attention, they are automatically going to start dilating and expanding. Let me say all this differently. Over time, with practice, nanopauses between thoughts will become micropauses, which will become normal pauses, which will become longer and longer until eventually the vastness and emptiness and quietness of your mind is all you perceive. By the way, this practice can be done wherever, whenever. If you ever just find yourself getting super riled up at something, just wait and pay attention to the lapses that will inevitably arise in the mind. They'll happen. You just have to be patient. And when they do, you're going to have considerably more clarity and groundedness upon which you can make better decisions. Wait. Do you see the irony in all of this? Because you can't overcome thinking by intellectualizing about how it arises, because thinking about thinking is still just thinking. Doesn't that make this entire video kind of moot? Like, while it can definitely seem helpful for you and me to get all theoretical and logical about the psyche and the machinations of the mind, ultimately it's not actually going to help you solve the problem. Like, you can read all the books you want about how to swim, but unless you get in the freaking water, it's all just intellectual mumbo jumbo. In other words, you're just better off choosing to sit down, close your eyes, and trying to calm or quiet the mind than you are thinking about how you're going to go about quieting your mind. Just sit down and meditate. Your mind is always going to be able to come up with excuses as to why today isn't going to work for meditation. But ignore it, right? The only time you can meditate is now. Just suck it up and get it done. If you want more help along in your journey, make sure to join me in one of my live or recorded yoga classes. You'll find that linked in the description below. Otherwise, sign up for my free Body, Mind, Soul newsletter. It's sent to your inbox every Sunday morning and includes 3 short reflections on how to make the most of material and spiritual life. That's it for me. Thank you for liking, subscribing, paying attention, and I will see you in the next video.